and welcome back to Mohawk TV's coverage of the 2012 Mohawk Council elections. I'm your host today, one of them, Regan Jacobs, and I'm in studio right now with current Grand Chief Mike Delisle, who is also rerunning in this election. So Mike, how are you doing? And
Good.
Welcome to studio.
Thank you for the invitation. Look forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself for those of you who don't know Mike Delisle, our community member first and foremost, and then our Grand Chief.
Sure. First elected to council in 1998. As a council member, ran for Grand Chief in 2004, ran unopposed, so it was a claim to the title. Continue in the responsibility through today and look forward to the challenges again. Almost 48 years old, married to Terry Horn, 3 children, father Mike Delisle, mother Grace Hemlock, and I'm in it for the long haul.
What made you decide to run again in this election?
Unfinished business. We've taken the seniority file, I'll say not as far as we had liked to in the last term, and we've been in what I guess I'll consider pre-negotiation since it was agreed to negotiate in 2003. I took the chair in 2004, a bit of internal and external consultation on how this process would flesh out. And when the Conservatives got in 2006, the table changed, obviously. The lead negotiator changed on Canada's side. And we're still in pre-negotiation. As I said, they don't have a financial mandate from Cabinet. They don't have a political mandate on some of the risks and how averse they are to risk politically on this file yet. So we're still beating the drum, so to speak, and that's one of the pieces of unfinished business. Quebec still needs to be taking a task on that file, as well as several others, maybe as small, and I don't want to minimalize it, but as small as contractual obligations on Highway 207 and beyond from the original 1999 transport agreement, all the way up to fulfilling their obligation on Highway 30 lands that need to be given back to Kahnawake. The promise is there. I'm confident it will. I know it's been a controversial issue in the community, but stand by the decision council made and confident that it will happen.
Why do you think people it has been a controversial issue, in your opinion? Because I know as a journalist I've heard a lot of different stories, but do you understand why it is?
Well, my, I guess, first take would be that there wasn't enough consultation, if any at all, in the community about this exchange of land, so to speak, and I think it needs to be put into proper context. The Highway 30 project first started many years ago, probably around the same time that Canada agreed to deal with the negotiation on seigneury in 2003-04. When Quebec changed political parties in 2003, the Liberals changed what would have been expansion of Highway 132 up to our border, digging a trench similar to DeCarry Boulevard to make the extension of Highway 30 more acceptable and user-friendly for trucks and major transport and so on. Changed it to the South Corridor. That was an election promise made to the constituents in our region in Quebec, saying that if they are elected, they'll move Highway 30 expansion into the green zone, into the green belt, directly transecting seigneurial territory.
Exactly.
So in discussions with them from 2004 to 2007, we said, well, look, you're infringing, obviously, number one, on Kahnawake. You're making an imposition in a process that we've already entrenched ourselves in negotiation with Canada on what they recognize are breaches to lawful obligation to Kahnawake historically, as well as the negotiation process, because you're going to transect lands that we're looking to come back to Kahnawake.
Right.
So they hold a little over 500 acres along the corridor of Highway 30 on our side of that border, as well as 34 acres in Chateauguay by Ministry of Transport by expropriation. We said, well, how about you give that plus another 200 acres you find somewhere in compensation for this huge project that's already been underway. A lot of the other sectors of it, west of us and east of us, had already been completed. They had already gone out to tender and done all of the research to do these types of researches and construction. We wanted to ensure that the area around Turtle River was not going to be disturbed, and they guarantee that. So there were a lot of other factors that came into this decision, but we felt that if there's an opportunity to get 700 acres of land back for Kahnawake, why not take it? So I understand that there's still that feeling in the community that there was lack of consultation, but I have said that when the next time it happens, and the 200 acres that Quebec owes, as well as obviously Canada to the tune of 24,000, consultation will be extensive. This was an opportunity, and council seized it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people would say, well, they needed that to extend Highway 30. They needed to come through Ganawage. They needed to, and you know, ask our permission. And people were prepared to, I guess, put up those roadblocks and protest. And then it was done so quickly, and some people felt that it was done overnight. And some of your own chiefs on council weren't even aware of it. Why so much secrecy?
Well, I don't know what chiefs weren't aware of it, because this was an initiative taken on by Mike Delisle. I need obviously to consult with the table to be able to ensure that this is the direction we want to go in. So maybe a chief wasn't there one Monday, or maybe their memory isn't serving them correctly, but this wasn't my initiative. This had to come from table before it would be able to move forward.
But it did come down to you. Didn't it boil down to your decision? At the end of the day, it was only you that decided to do this.
No, absolutely not. The discussion was between myself and Jeff Kelly, who was then an MP, not the Indian Affairs Minister, but was put in place as the negotiator on behalf of the Liberal government of Quebec. But everything that I say or say yes or no to must still be confirmed by the table. Okay.
It is controversial, and we could talk more about it, but I mean, I'm glad that we're discussing it now, because I'm sure that it's come up in the past, and it continues to rear its head on occasion. What are some of the biggest issues that you've seen come and gone over the last couple of years in your tenure, and that perhaps maybe you could have handled better, or that you felt you handled well as Grand Chief?
I think, I won't say disappointment, but my biggest problem that I'm still dealing with right now is lack of participation in the community, whether it be through community decision-making process or anything else as simple as community meetings. People have asked for more, and in the past year, even though we only had quarterly meetings, we had 3 special meetings, so there actually was 7 in the course of the last year for community discussions, consultation, and so on. I'm disappointed actually very disappointed in the reaction to community decision-making process. People, my understanding is, have for decades asked for decisions to be put back in their hands, whether it be in the creation of laws or otherwise in the community. Therefore, we launched Legislative Coordinating Commission and the CDMP to say, here you are. We've put the hands of lawmaking back into the community, whether it be Justice Act membership, which is coming, which is another file I'll touch on in a minute, and come and participate. You wanted it, here it is. Here's your opportunity. And you know, there's too many cliches about trying to bring the horse to water, but this is our community. It's not mine. We're not trying to dictate the way things are going to be done in this community, but it's going to take participation. That's who we were in the past. That's how we are today. And I think it's a bit of a test to the community to say, sure, 1979, return to traditional government, a form of traditional government, however you interpret what was said, you know, that many decades ago. Again, this was an attempt to try and include people back into the social fabric, political fabric, and decision-making models in the community. It's ours. You know, maybe it's adapted from something we did 400, 600, 700, and even presently today, you know, through Longhouse process. We're not trying to alienate that. We're just trying to get inclusion by community again and have a sense of that authority being put back in their hands. Secondly, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, do you feel, though, that maybe the lack of participation from a percentage of the community is demonstrating that we're not accepting this process from the traditional body? Because there's a large majority of people in the community who are traditional, and then you have, you know, whether we like to agree with that or not, you do have different sectors, and you do have that division. So are you looking to get the traditional side of the community to come over to the Mohawk Council system, or? Absolutely
not. I don't view us being segregated that way. I understand that there is that division, and I hate to use the word faction. I understand that.
Yeah. It's a reality.
It is a reality.
You know, I don't think we all would like to say that there's these divisions, but it is there.
It is a reality. We've seen it recently. Sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's not. We're trying to bring that sense of community back again. I know that the Longhouse recently addressed this as well, and we know that they've, through several press releases, said We disagree with community decision-making process. We don't think anyone from community should participate. We don't want anybody to be involved, so on and so forth.
Right.
And recently after that, launched their own in terms of education process on Haudenosaunee decision-making models. So I encourage that. I think it needs to go hand in hand. And we're actually talking today on a specific file about, as we get closer to consultation on whether it be seniority, membership, or what have you, what's the role of the other bodies in the community? And we've often asked, and I've often said, what's the role of the nation? Who represents that, and how does that bring some of those issues forward to the community? There needs to be a better interface. We've tried a couple of times. I won't say they failed, but when we get hit with 8 points of jurisdiction being the beginning of the discussion, it's very hard to continue. But I think there needs to be better dialogue in the future for sure.
What do you think are some of the, again, to rephrase that question or re-ask it, some of the bigger issues that you feel as Grand Chief that are important to the community?
Membership. It's the basis of our identity, and it probably is termed the wrong way. It should be citizenship. And again, I bring in the role of the nation, because you're not a member of a community, you're a citizen of a nation. But I don't think that's the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake role. But where does it come from? Where does this nationality come from? Where does the citizenship discussions take place? And it doesn't take place in the community. There are hardliners which will bang the table, and I won't because it'll rattle the microphones, but people that will bang the table and say, well, no, this is what it takes to be a member of Mohawks of Kahnawake. This is what membership means. And on the other side of the table, people will say, well, fine, don't consider me a softliner, but there's different ways to approach it. Through Longhouse, through adoption process, the way we've done it through the Great Law, so on and so forth. But I think the two need to meld again somehow, and I've talked about adding to the rafters for a couple of years now, and I think that has to happen. That hardline approach and that drawing the line in the sand, and people are probably tired of me hearing me say that, but it is what it is. In 1981 and 1984 and in 2003, with the passing of the Mohawk Law, what actually have we done? The first one was moratorium, second one was law, third one was law. It's still not accepted externally, and for some people in the community, I don't know if it's majority or not, it's still not accepted internally as well. There's
a lot of controversy around the issue.
Absolutely.
Why do you think, what has stalled the process at this point though? Because it's been a while, it hasn't moved forward. Where's Mohawk Council at with it right now?
Really having a hard time dealing with the Council of Elder activity suspension, and clarification on that too, is that this was a decision made jointly that we would work toward a new process, and it never happened since 2007, so it's been quite some time. There are people waiting in the wing, so to speak, that deserve to be put back on the registry for various reasons that haven't been. We've tried to accommodate and alleviate some of that pressure and concern in certain issues, especially dealing with elders, without circumventing Mohawk law through process. But even that, I mean, it was very difficult, and I tabled something as membership portfolio chief, which I've held for about a year and a half now, from the table to say, is there a way we can, again, not circumvent the law, but put a process in place, maybe through regulation that was taken over by Council of Elders upon agreement and an amendment to the law way back when, to say the people who are slam dunks, in my terminology, should automatically be approved by the registrar. And in the last discussions at the table, and I've changed my opinion and reflected that at the table, that we shouldn't contradict the law that we put in place. And people will criticize, we've done it in other areas, whether it be gaming, whether it be membership versus election, so on and so forth. But again, that lack of consistency really is an issue.
Yes.
The problems within membership, the problems within the lawmaking authorities, and that lack of recognition externally is part of the reason why I want to come back.
For sure. I mean, you cannot apply law liberally. You know, I mean, people there needs to be checks and balances in the system, and Kahnawake is no different. I think people do feel maybe some of that mistrust in the Mohawk Council is because of the way things are possibly applied. There's special cases, and what goes, what will work over here won't necessarily work over here. Why do you feel that there are inconsistencies when dealing with these types of issues?
I'll take membership for the ultimate example again. When the community was consulted for about 19 years, between 1984, the old law, and 2003, when the new membership code was put in place for the registry, people were very vocal. There was a huge contingent that came out at the Knights of Columbus in a very emotional meeting, almost 3 times, but the last one was very emotional, culminating in council moving forward on accepting the draft and passing it into law before the community was put in place for Legislative Coordinating Commission. But people were very adamant that you must maintain the fact to run for leadership in the community to be 50%. And there is a difference, even though it be slight in some people's interpretation, between being 50% Mohawk of Kahnawake versus 4 great-grandparents or considered Mohawk of Mohawks of Kahnawake within the custom code. So there's an obvious discrepancy between the 2 laws. Yes. And when it was passed before council was adamant, saying, we believe the community still wants to see no less than 50% Mohawk being elected for leadership in the community. And it was backed by the people who said, yes, this is what we want within the law. Our legal team obviously said, well, you got to choose between the 2. Yes. And it still carries forward today, because the election law is now in the hopper as well, and going through process for electoral reform finally, and hopefully in the near future, because I do believe it needs change. But we'll see if there's going to be a consistency, and we'll see if it either changes the election law or the membership code. I have opinion on that, but I'll wait for it to go into the public before I state my position.
Okay. At this point, you've been in for consecutive terms as our Grand Chief, and some people will say, well, I haven't seen much done. I haven't seen much change. And obviously, do you feel that that's the truth? And how can, what do you feel that you've done in the last, term, if you will, to demonstrate this community is moving forward and in a good direction?
Sure. I think that's a fair statement, and politics moves slow, especially in Indian country, and especially in a community as diverse as we are, faced with, I would venture to say, some of the issues that a lot of other First Nation communities, maybe even Mohawk communities, don't face on a daily basis. I'll go back to 2004 when first elected and saying, yeah, I'm prepared for this job. I want to take the next step, and I want to be able to say I'd like to lead this community. I'm still in the same position, but have grown immensely over the past 8 years. Was I completely prepared in 2004? I have no problem saying no, because this job is more than a job. The responsibility is huge. The issues that face us on a daily basis, the files that we deal with on a daily, weekly basis are immense as well. And continuing to grow into the position, continuing to educate myself and understand complexities, whether it be membership versus citizenship, internally, externally, seniority, dealing with Canada, and now hopefully getting Quebec on board to be able to say, there are land issues here that need to be reconciled. But I'll say that in terms of progress, institutional capacity, I think for me has been one of the issues that I brought forward since 2004. And I'll say and use Mohawk self-insurance and the Court of Kahnawake as 2 examples. And this has nothing to do with the individuals that are working in the positions there or the bodies that encompass Mohawk self-insurance and then the court, but that lack of authority or exercised authority and recognition externally has been a real problem. Recently, we got Quebec to change its law on labor, and that was controversial as well in the community about, and for most people it boiled down versus union versus non, but to change Quebec law to accommodate and accept, yes, for the means and purposes of completing a job on the Mercier Bridge, but I think it has much longer term effects. But once we did that, we started looking internally and saying, well, why wasn't this done 25 years ago? Because you initiated Mohawk self-insurance for a purpose, to alienate external jurisdiction from us. And we said, fine, that was done. But you create this false bubble of jurisdiction saying, we've done this. but the institution that should be grounded behind it, bricks and mortar that was brought up, really was never done. So the foundations weren't there. Court of Kahnawake, and recently we brought forward justice, and it's completing its final stages to go back to the community and say, is this what you want? Is this what you need? And it's an essential piece of governance here in Kahnawake. Court of Kahnawake has appointed people that must follow Indian Act and external laws.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with them. They're a federal appointment, and it worked well for a period of time. We've looked so far now as to ensure that Canada, Quebec, and any other jurisdiction will say, yes, Kahnawake has its own authority, but can only happen, and it sounds like the American, but they're based on ours, by the people, from the people. Mm-hmm. So that's why CDMP was put in place. That's why a community decision-making process, I hate to use acronyms, Kahnawake Legislative Coordinating Commission was put in place. And the only way we're going to be able to assert that type of jurisdiction externally is to have the people approve Kahnawake Justice Act. So those are some of the things that I'm proud of in terms of what's happened since 2007.
Mm-hmm. So there's been movement.
There has been movement. It's been slow. It's been frustrating, especially on the seigneurial front, negotiating with Canada. Mm-hmm. And as I said, it's really pre-negotiation before they get their formal financial and political mandate from Cabinet. But mm-hmm. we are making strides. We are moving forward. It's extremely frustrating at times.
And, to segue, we have to wrap it up. We're going to take a little bit longer here. Into economy at this point, frustration. We had the casino debate again in the last couple of months, and people are saying, hopefully this does not come up again. But when we look at the economy here in Kahnawake, you always hear the same thing, we're struggling. We're struggling as a people. What type of industry? Because, business is not supposed to be mandated by the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake. We have economic development for that. And a lot of people are saying, well, what do they do then if Mohawk Council is taking on business initiatives? But in your opinion, as the Grand Chief, what will Kahnawake do to build economy in this community, especially when you have the cigarette industry, laying off hundreds of people? You see the decline in that industry. Small businesses are a big part of this community. What's the plan, in your opinion?
I think two things need to happen. You can't put a price on formal education. I think our people need to take a vested interest in educating and ensuring their future, regardless of whether the economy is here in Kahnawake or externally. Mm-hmm. I think the opportunity is there, and it's waning. Because I'm not going to talk about budget cuts and so on, but the government is looking at every facet, and I think they're really starting to target education as well. And it's not only in Kahnawake, it's across Canada, Indian country, anywhere else, that if you're not using the services, why do they continue to provide it? Mm-hmm. And I know the argument is based in treaty and so on, and they need to provide, and that's a solid argument. But if it continues to go away and we have no way to educate ourselves and better ourselves and assure our futures, as a person, as a family, and so on, mm-hmm. we're in real trouble. I think that's number one. Secondly, I think there needs to be a reintegration between the political bodies and the people in charge through a law like Delisle for economic development, because there's two facets. People look at economic development as all-encompassing, saying you're there to generate revenue mm-hmm. and you're there to create employment. Agreed, but mm-hmm. they're so diverse and different.
Yes.
You can create small businesses that will promote 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 jobs. You can create medium-sized businesses that will do, but will they generate revenue for the community? Mm-hmm. They do great things in terms of business services. I think this company attests to that, and others in the community as well, whether it be mom and pop or a little bit bigger. But if we're looking at real revenue generation, I think there needs mm-hmm. to be a reintegration. And I've looked at models across the country. There's a good one in Manitoba, in Indian country, where three ways: sector of the community, mm-hmm. business; sector of the community, government; and sector of the community in terms of revenue generation. Mm-hmm. People mandated to do that with credentials, sit down on a monthly basis to brainstorm on mm-hmm. how we're going to be able to build economy in our communities. And there's mm-hmm. a 5-member community in Manitoba that I think has done a great job on that. So those are some of the things that I think need to be brought back forward.
Right. And I think that's maybe something that if you get reelected, possibly that's something that you could look into.
Definitely.
Finally, I know we've got to wrap it up at this point, but if you were to be reelected as Grand Chief, what is your plan? What do you plan on working on? What do you see yourself being more interested in this time around?
I think because we've come as far as we have so far in negotiations with Canada and to a limited degree Quebec on seniority, I need to focus on that. Myself and the other 3 chiefs that sit on the main table need to focus, I won't say 100% of the energies, but more energies than we have, at least on my behalf, over the next 3 years to see some type of resolution, maybe not formal resolution of the entire grievance, but concrete steps to show community, and we're planning to do that soon, in whether it's me or whoever else after election and after summer and so on, in consultation with community, that this is where we need to go. This is what we're going to see, and this is how we're going to push Canada to say once and for all, certainly and finally, you're going to resolve this matter according to Kahnawake terms. And secondly, I think membership, as it turns into something else, and I took the reins because lack of, I'll say, interest from the table back in January, a year and a half ago. Membership needs a dedicated person as well. So I'm looking for someone else to take on that role and responsibility. But for me, it is mostly about seniority and how it bleeds into the 7 other specific claims that Kahnawake has.
Yes.
If we're looking for economic prosperity and number 1, return of lands to the community, which has been mandated for a long time, all the way back to 1988, 1990, then I think this file needs and deserves the recognition it has, and that level of importance means dedicated service to it.
Right. Is there anything else at this point that you feel is important to add before we wrap up?
Just to community, that I'm still passionate about this. It's not a job for me. It's about the responsibility. I think I take it on as well as I can, still growing into the position. People may say 8 years is long enough. I completely disagree. It's not about career. It's not about what I'm going to do after this. I'm still entrenched in it. You can ask my family, friends, or colleagues if they wish to share it with you, that I give every effort I can. And it's the reason why I've turned gray, gained weight, and don't sleep as well as I used to, because I love this. It's something that I've become passionate towards, and I still want to serve my community.
Okay. Well, thank you, and good luck on July 7th.
Yeah.